Hello, Narnach here. Welcome to the Theorycrafting before the Path of Exile Ascendancy. So, I'm gonna start the Ascendancy and the Perandus League with a Juggernaut Marauder. So, the plan is to basically use all the new things that are going to be available to the Marauder. So that's going to be Sunder, that's going to be Juggernaut, that's going to be the Stone Golem, that's going to be the Ancestral Totem. I'm just going to try out everything that is there and see how they play. I'm going to pick the Juggernaut because it's a very tanky specialization for the Marauder that I'm going to pick Unyielding for to give me some extra damage while I have a Fortify up and some extra life regen. And we got some armor and life regen here as well. Then we also pick up some extra attack damage and armor, and then we get into unflinching. So you get a 20% chance whenever you get hit to gain an endurance charge. So you no longer need to hit enemies, you also get them when you get hit, and it increases your maximum by 1. So that makes you extra tanky, because every endurance charge is 4% physical damage reduced that you take, and it's going to be, I think, 6% more elemental resistances, or 4 or 5, something along those lines. But it's going to be good for your resistances. Then more attack damage and more armor, and then eventually we get Unrelenting, 6% increased damage per endurance charge. So suddenly endurance charges also boost your damage output rather than only boosting your defenses, which is very interesting because that way you can use your defenses offensively. And if you are at your maximum endurance charges, you have 8% reduced elemental damage taken, which is pretty powerful as well because it just stacks on top of your resistances. So, the build I'm going to play is going to be a two-handed mace-wielding maniac, wearing full plate armor, or however you would call it, just the pure strength-based armor. I'm going to spike a lot of points into just increasing my armor, increasing my life regeneration. The build, what I've got planned, is going to go up to level 88. And by that point, I will have 8.5% life regen always. And whenever I have Fortify, which should be basically in all the battles, I'll get another 1.5% on top of that. So it's going to be 10% life regenerated per second. The life is going to be boosted by 175% from the skill tree based on what I've allocated right now. But I think having a lot of armor and regen should balance out that it's not exactly 180 points. On top of that, the two-handed maces. Two-handed maces are good because they boost two things I care about. They have some interesting synergies with radius area skills. There's Bonebreaker here that gives you 5%. There are a couple of high-end maces that actually give you another 5% radius. And as a cherry on top, you get a Calling Strike whenever you stun enemies. So stunning is going to be another thing I care about. So I am also going to pick up down here Stun Mastery with the nodes that lead up to it. So eventually the entire skill tree is going to give me 33% reduced enemy stun threshold, which will stack with the stun support gem that I'm going to add to both Earthquake and Sunder, in order to always have a very high chance or just outright guaranteeing that I'm going to stun enemies. So that's going to be another safety part of the build. I mean, if enemies are stunned, they can't attack me, which means I don't take any damage, which means I am less likely to die. So from the start, just basically make my way towards Warrior's Blood. It's life regen, it's stun threshold, it's strength, it's all goodness. You get some life over here, and you get versatility for a bit of accuracy, which is going to be useful, because you're a Marauder, you need to get your accuracy from somewhere. Armor mastery over here. Then we move over here. We grab stamina and life regeneration per endurance charge. Given that I'm going to get about 6 or 7 endurance charges, maybe 8 eventually, that's going to be 1 to 1.5% life regeneration stacked on top of everything else. We got some barbarism over here for some fire resistance, and then we make our way towards the mace wheel, Getting to the mace wheel is probably going to be one of my early goals. I have to see a little bit how I'm going to stack things. I'm probably going to lower the priority of the endurance charges until I'm actually capable of generating them. Until then, they don't matter. Juggernaut down here is pretty useful to get. It boosts your armor and your life. Down here, Lust for Carnage, physical damage leached as life, with some bonuses to life on hit and increased life leech per second. All good stuff. And down here we had the stun threshold. So once I'm done in the Marauder area, or once I'm done with the important bits, moving up in the tree. So we got Born to Fight here. Then we branch off to the side to get Butchery, boost damage with two-handed weapons. Move further up into the Templar area. To the side here we have access to some dexterity and intelligence, which are going to be useful for the support gems that we start picking up by Act 2, Act 3, so it's useful to get some points. Once we get to Act 4, I'm going to pick up Increased Area of Effect, which is an intelligence-based skill. Starts at about 63 intelligence, if I remember correctly. It goes all the way up to 111 at level 20. So you need to have some intelligence in the build in order to just keep increasing the radius of the attacks. So getting some from the skill tree, there's not a lot of points that are actually in the normal path to grab. So that's why I'm actually going out of my way to grab Ancestral Knowledge. Means you have to get less of your intelligence from your gear. So you have more flexibility when gearing. So here we got martial expertise, and leading up to this there's a little bit of accuracy, and there's more damage, which is good, and more accuracy. Over here we got combat stamina, armor, life, and life regen. That's all the thing you will want. Unrelenting, maximum life, and the reduced mana cost of skills. Seems useful. We'll see how useful it turns out to be in the end. And similarly on yielding, you take 20% reduced extra damage from critical strikes. And as well, it boosts armor by a fair percentage. I think this is going to be very useful for late cruel, merciless, and mapping in the endgame. Especially if you roll maps where monsters do extra crits, have a larger crit chance. Being able to reduce the damage from crits just outright before armor kicks in sounds like a very good defensive option. And especially because I don't have block or dodge or things like that, reducing damage before it hits armor sounds like a very good idea. Up here we got Blunt Instrument, which boosts physical damage with maces and armor, and the path leading up to it does the same. If we branch over to the side, we got an endurance charge, we got some more life. And over here we got Sanctity, armor, life regen, and some intelligence and strength. To the side here, life regen, mana regen seems useful for keeping both of the blue and red bubbles in a good shape. We move up here, gain some life, gain some damage, gain some more int. And then up here we have increased area of effect. Up in total 15% increased radius, 20% increased damage, so it all stacks. And especially because and afterwards we move over to the side, we get Shaper and we get the Cyan Life Wheel. The order that I'm gonna do things in, I'm not 100% sure of. I'll just see what the build needs and I'll just move in certain directions accordingly. But probably one of the first priorities is just getting the mace bonuses, because then at least I'll have my damage bonuses locked in. And after that we can just focus on staying alive. Or not. I mean, if everything is stunned or dead, I don't really need to pay attention to defenses, right? So that's basically, this is going to all be done by level 88, if my math is correct. It looks like we're actually going to save Oak most of the time. I mean, on normal you get life. On Cruel, I think you get 16% extra damage. There is a bit of a trade-off. You could also say, well, we kill Oak, or we kill everybody on Cruel, we get the skill point, and then we grab melee damage and life. Because then you get 16% increased melee physical damage, as well as 16 extra life. So this seems better than Oak. So this is just a straight one-off point, and I think I'm actually going to grab that one. And on Merciless difficulty, of course, we spare Oak because we want extra endurance charges, because the entire build synergizes very, very well with them. In terms of gearing, Two-handed mace, heavy plate armor. Basically, that's gonna be pretty straightforward. The gems, the support gems, actually made a couple of notes. So increase area of effect. I already mentioned it on Earthquake because you have to do 2 hits. The first hit is you hit the floor, cause tremors, you wait a bit, and then boom, the ground explodes. The reduced duration skill is actually gonna help you speed up the wait, so it hits earlier. But it also means because you can hit, if you attack very fast and you could hit the ground 10 times before the first hit would cause the ground to actually explode. The thing is, you're not going to get 10 explosions, you're only going to get 1. So while you're waiting for the ground to explode, additional hits with Earthquake are not actually going to cause more explosions. So reducing the duration means basically you can make the ground explode more times per time frame, which is going to be good. So then we have melee physical, seems useful just to boost damage. And then you're already at 3 supports and a base gem, so that's 4 gems. It's very easy to get a 4-link. A 5-link is doable with some work once you got the currency, and a 6-link is wishful thinking that you might get, but you shouldn't count on it. So after that, endurance charge on melee stun. Because I'm going to be stunning a lot, endurance charge on melee stun seems useful. And as the 6th one, grab the stun support gem in order to reduce enemy stun threshold. I might shuffle the order of things around a little bit. It might be useful to grab a stun earlier, for example. So, Sunder, it's you hit the things, you hit the ground, it attacks in a line, makes all the enemies that get hit explode in a small shockwave. So again, it's also AoE based, so you want increased area of effect on it. It doesn't have a duration component, so you don't need to put less duration on it. So instead I'm going to add the Fortify support gem, which boosts damage and grants me Fortify, which is something that my Juggernaut Ascendancy class synergizes with. So that's going to be a nice bonus. And on top of that, melee physical seems useful because I'm just going to do pure physical damage. And then haven't quite decided, so I'm just going to try a couple of things. Endurance charge and melee stun seems useful. Grabbing stun might be useful. Life gain on hit seems also useful because you're doing multiple AoE effects, so you're going to hit a lot of enemies. Life gain on hit might be useful for just keeping my life topped up. So, yeah, as I said before, I like to experiment with builds, so I'm just going to do that experiment. So, in addition to that, I'm going to grab a Stone Golem as my golem, which taunts enemies in an area of effect, and it also grants life regen. It's basically a walking rejuvenation totem, as if my understanding is correct. It's a strength dex golem, so I'm gonna need a little bit of dex to keep that little fella leveling along with me. But you only need like 70 points at level 20, so it's not a lot. It's pretty easy to achieve. So I'm gonna add minion life, minion damage, and increased area of effect to him, and just put him in my gloves or something. That seems useful. For movement, leap slam, and probably just gonna put faster attacks on it and leave it at that. It's just for moving around and getting out of hairy situations or getting into hairy situations, depending on what I want to do. Herald of Ash as an aura. If you're doing massive damage, it seems useful to use the overkill damage to set other enemies nearby aflame. I'm gonna try it and see how it works out for me. Then in addition to that, I am thinking of running Blasphemy with a Warlord's Mark. Because Warlord's Mark reduces monster stun duration and it grants you some life regen. It has a chance of endurance charges when you kill enemies. So again, it's another form of just obtaining endurance charges. It might be that I don't need all of those things and that I could pick something else. Maybe Enfeeble as a defensive option, or I don't know. But for now I'm thinking Warlord's Mark, and then afterwards we'll see. So in addition to that, Ancestral Totem. That's probably going to be one of the first skills I pick up, because it only seems to require level 4. It's the same requirement as Flame Totem in that regard. And so I'm just going to put a melee splash on him and just basically treat him as a meleeer. So melee physical, things like that. So I'll have to see how it works out in terms of actual space in my gem slots. So that's it for the build overview. That's currently my thinking. It's actually now 9:15, which means that the league has already, the Ascendancy should have been live now for about 15 minutes. So I'm gonna stop recording this intro and I'm actually gonna start playing. So thank you very much for watching and see you soon.